Okay, hey, hello again. This is Microdesk webinar for Revit tips and tricks. Let me try this again. So in this webinar, we're going to be looking at using global parameters and key schedules. A little bit about myself. My name is Alan Alexander. I will be conducting today's webinar. I am a registered architect in the state of New York. I've been working in the industry for over 10 years. With the last few years, I've been specializing in BIM management, helping firms with modeling, workflows, coming up with strategies for implementing BIM or Revit in particular. Also work with Navisworks, and I am a Revit certified professional. Right. A little information about Microdesk. Microdesk was founded in 1994. We are an AECO industry consulting firm. We are in multiple locations throughout the country and internationally. We have an office in the UK. We have over 150 professionals working in the industry, and we provide a variety of services. From everything from building information modeling to workflow assessments, providing workflow strategies, helping with the implementation of technology, providing mentoring, training, such as this webinar. And we also do applications development, developing tools, custom tools for various products. So we have developers here who do that. Okay, so global parameters. Before we start talking about global parameters specifically, I just want to take a step back and do kind of a broad overview of Revit, available Revit parameters, right? So we have, first off, family parameters. These parameters are established within the family editor and can be used to set a function across an entire family type when it's set as a type parameter. Or they can be used to modify information within each particular instance when it's set as an instance parameter. And these parameters can all be scheduled. We have project parameters. Now, these parameters are specific to a particular model file, right? They are established within the project environment. These parameters can be assigned to or segregated by Revit model categories, but they exist independently of any particular family type, right? So you can have a project parameter that can be applied to a variety of different families within the same category. And these two can also be scheduled along with other parameters of that category, right? Then we have shared parameters, right? Shared parameters can be used by multiple families or project files, right? Because these parameters are stored outside the project model. It's stored outside the Revit file in a TXT file. These can appear in schedules and tags, and after you add a shared parameter, you can use it within, you can assign it to different families. And finally, we have global parameters. These were introduced as part of Revit 2016. And global parameters are specific to a single project file. Now, they're not category specific, and they're not associated to any particular family or type. Global parameters use simple values derived from equations, or values using other, making use of other global parameters. They can be used to both drive parameter values or report values. They can be assigned to modeled objects and to non-adjacent dimensions. And what global parameters do is that they help simplify the manipulation of model elements across the project. And they also help ensure a level of consistency in that information, right, in our model information. So that's a brief overview of parameters with available parameters within Revit files. So let's look at global parameters specifically, right? So I have this simple floor plan set up. And what I want to do first is I want to look at just a simple application of global parameters. And what we're going to do is use a global parameters to drive dimensions, to control dimensions across the project. And this is a very basic use for global parameters, right? So in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to use a global parameter to help set the offset, the jam offset dimension for these doors. So right now we see across our floor plan there's a variety of different offsets. Maybe when you're modeling these doors, you're just placing them on the wall when working quickly. So what we can do is we can set a global parameter to help control these dimensions, right? So how do we do that? First, we come up here to our Manage tab, and your global parameters command is found in your settings panel. Now this is your global parameters dialog box, right? And from here we can select the new global parameter icon. Now within this new dialog box, we provide first the parameter name. In this case, I'm going to just call it jam offset. Right. Then we have a number of other settings here to check off, similar to parameter creation within your family editor. You decide upon a discipline. We can leave it as common here. The length as a type of parameter works. And we're going to group these under dimensions. You also have the ability to establish a tooltip description, which allows other users to quickly get a description of what it does. So we can do that. We can say this. Jam, door jam, whatever. And then hit OK. We'll look at another example of using a global parameter as a reporting parameter, but for this case, we're going to say OK. Now we can give it like a default value here. I'm going to say I want all my door jams to be 6 inches off of the wall, and I hit OK here. So now we've established a global parameter, and what we have to do next is we have to associate it with a model element, right, or a dimension here. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down, and I'm going to select these dimensions that I've had laid out. Right? And you can come up here and you got your drop-down chamfer label, and you'll see we can select our jam offset parameter, and we just select it. And we can go back, we can test it by flexing this parameter. We can say instead of 6, I want it to be 4 inches. And the change is made throughout the model immediately, right? And consistently. Now, another way to apply the parameter or create the parameter is to select a dimension. And you can also create this parameter by using this icon and take you to the global parameter property dialog box. A couple of things I want to point out here. Once you apply or you associate a global parameter to a dimension, it's going to present you with this pencil icon here, and that lets you know that a global parameter is driving this dimension, right? And it'll take you to the dialog box here. We can double click on this, and you can set it to show label in view. It'll tell you exactly what label is being used here. Global parameters work in similar ways as constraints. So if you delete these dimensions, you will get a warning letting you know that you deleted this constraint. You can choose to unconstrain it, or you can hit OK. And they'll be hidden. Of course, you can go reveal hidden elements. Oh, Never mind. Go backwards. Delete this guy. Let's try that again. Actually, I'm going to step back here so that I can. So now the other thing I want to show is for this dimensional control example, if you have a variety of objects here, you place a string of dimensions, you can associate this entire string of dimension to a global parameter. Right? So what we can do is we can, let's go back and let's create a couple more. I'm going to go to global parameters. I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to call it desk spacing. Right? I'm going to leave it as a length and dimension. That's all fine. All right, and I'm going to make this parameter a function of the room width here, or the room length. All right, so I'm going to create another one. Call that room length. So we have 4 desks. Now you can enter a simple formula. You can say desk spacing is equal to room length divided by 5. Right, and now we can associate these parameters to the various global parameters. Right, so you can also apply global parameters across a string of dimensions. Right, and now if we were to modify our room length, it should, oh, it gives me a warning. Oh, multiple rooms, that's okay. But you can see the spacing of the desks automatically update. All right, so that's one way to apply global parameters, by directly selecting the dimension and adding the parameter to it. Another way to do it is to select the element and associate the parameter through the properties dialog box. So a quick example of that. Here I can select the ceiling. And you'll see in the properties, in the instance properties of the ceiling, we have these buttons to the right of parameters that we can associate to a global parameter. And if you hover over it, it says associate global parameter. Right? And it'll give you a list of parameters, and it'll sort them, or what it'll make available to you is determined by the parameter type. Right? So in this case, it would be a length parameter, which can be associated to this height offset. Right? So say you wanted all similar to the doors, you wanted all the ceilings of the meeting rooms here to be consistent. You would come here and select them all, height offset, and I had already created one here, so I got ceiling height meeting room, hit OK. And now you can see when you select one of these objects that's been grayed out, and it gives you a little equal sign letting you know that it's been associated to a global parameter. So that's those are very simple uses of a global parameter. It's just the direct dimensional control of these objects. Now let's look at some of the other things we can do. All right. So we have a cross-section of our model here. And say what we wanted to do was we wanted to ensure that there was a certain amount of space in the plenum above the ceiling here. We can use global parameters, and we can use the reporting parameters or the reporting capability of these parameters to do a kind of check on our model, right? So what am I talking about? So here we have just a label dimension. It is from the bottom of the second floor slab to the top of the ceiling, and I had created a global parameter here called plenum det report, right? It's a check, so I set that there. Now, it's a reporting parameter, but we want to really make use of this functionality. We have to be able to associate it, or we have to be able to have a kind of graphic cue that lets us know that the ceiling doesn't meet our minimum clearance requirements, right? And to do that, we're going to employ a visibility graphics filter. Now, filters can only use our categories to establish your filter rules. So what we need to do is we need to create a bridge between our global parameter, which is not category specific, to something to help capture this information in a filter. And so what we're going to do is, what I've done actually is I've created a project parameter, which we can then associate to that global parameter. So here we have plenum height clearance. I'm going to modify here, just to see what it's done, and it's associated to the ceilings category here, right? So okay, right? And say we're particularly concerned as a designer with this area of the building, and we want to make sure we have enough clearance in this area. We can select these ceilings, and we can, in here we have our project parameter, and we can set it to the plenum depth global parameter, right? Okay. So now the reporting parameters feeding into this parameter a certain dimension, and we can go to our visibility graphics filter. I already have one set up here. Right? So we have for ceilings, it's drawing from the project parameter, and we can say if this is less than 5 feet, and okay, we're going to give this the surface a red color, right? The pattern's going to appear red. So let's hit okay. See what that does. So now that if we're going through the plan, we can know that hey, these ceilings need to be adjusted, right? And that's that global parameter that's helping us do that. So that's another use to check to spot check clearances. Now we can also add this functionality. We can use it to check against maybe a linked file. So this is a linked file from another model, right? And I can do the same exact thing that I did for the other ceilings here. I can add a parameter to this, or I can add a dimension and then add a parameter, and then I can go back and within my filters I can add a duct clearance warning. There you go. I already have that set up. Similar in rule, right? Something is less than, and this is another project parameter that it's set up, and I can give it a different color. Right. So there you go. That turns green. That lets me know that's too close to that duct. And if you were to, here I'm in the linked file. If I was to modify that in the linked file, let's see if I can do this. Save it. Sure. And then come back and reload it. Right. So that updates. Now, obviously, it's not very practical for any large-scale kind of clash detection. For those kind of things, you'd want to use a program like a Navisworks. But if there are key areas in your building that you know are going to present a problem, and you just want to monitor as you work, this could be one of the uses. All right. All right. So that was a basic overview of global parameters, and those examples illustrated much of the functionality of those parameters and how you set them up. So now we're going to talk about key schedules and how those can be used. Key schedules help automate data entry for elements within Revit, right? It helps to save time, and it also helps to ensure consistency of information within a schedule. Key schedule is just a user-defined list of values for a variety of different parameters within a specific Revit category. The information contained within key schedule can be applied to model objects. And this is done by creating a custom key parameter for that Revit category, and then linking the categories elements to that particular set of data, right? And we'll see what that looks like. Now, the most prevalent useful application for key schedules is to define room information, room object information, so all the data associated with the room object. So here you can see we have, I'm just going to turn on my room. So we have a bunch of room objects here. And you can see across their property panels, there's all this information that we have to fill out about these rooms. And you could use this for doors as well. Right? So I have a room schedule key started here. So you see I got office, right? Now how do we do that? We come up here, you go to schedules, go to new. It's the same way as creating a schedule for quantities or building components. You have to come to view, and within your create panels, you come up to schedules. And then you select the category, you can select rooms. And once you make the selection of the category, you're going to be given the option to create a schedule key. And then you'd have to, one, define the schedule name, and then also the key name. Now the key name is the title of the parameter that's going to be added to elements within this category. So that's what I had done here. And then after this, after you hit OK here, it's going to give you a menu to bring in fields into that key schedule, right? I called it a room style key schedule, right? So I got a couple of different fields set up here. Obviously, you have your finishes, but I also have occupant load, right, and occupancy. So I set this up that would feed this information to room, so it'll let me generate a finish schedule, but also an occupancy schedule, right? And we can look at how we do that. So I got a variety of fields being scheduled here, and adding schedules or adding fields is pretty straightforward. You come in here and you simply enter data row. So I'm going to fill this in with some additional information. I'm going to call this spiz. All right. I'm going to leave out the finishes, and I'm going to insert a few more. These occupant load values are just random, just for the sake of an example here. Hallway. I'll just skip over that. A few more. Oh, I think that might be enough. I'm going to delete that one. All right, so we have this key filled out with some basic information. I'm focusing really on occupant load, but obviously you fill it out for the rest of the parameters being scheduled here, right? And it's relatively easy to associate. Now we can come back here to our floor plan. We can grab our room object, and now you see we have a parameter added to our identity data. That is the key name that we had seen before. And you can say, well, I'm going to this was conference room, so I can add it as conference room. And you can see it'll change the name. Business area. Oh. Let me just add all these guys. I think I was selecting the name before this. Let me make sure I have the room style selected. Okay. So I can see when I select one of these, all that information is filled out according to that key, and it can't be tampered with, right? So schedule keys quickly allow you to push out a lot of information. Obviously, you can imagine if this was a larger building, multiple floors, and you can quickly go through and populate a lot of information into your model. Now we can come here. I'll just show one example of this. So here I'd create an occupancy schedule, right? So if we were doing a submission to the county, you can quickly populate your occupancy schedules here. And what I had done was had a number of fields, and what this does is it takes my occupant load, right? I should go here. So all I had to do was create a calculated value here where I would take my area and the occupant load information, which I had added to my schedule key, and it'll quickly create a total occupants schedule for me, right? And here's that occupants per square foot. That's the occupant load I had entered in my schedule key. So you can so it's a great way to quickly push out information, like I said. A further thing you can do, you can associate, once you have a key set up, you can associate that parameter to a color scheme. Oh, there you go, right? So just by entering one set of data, you can have a lot of different things worked out in your model. And that's basically the functionality of a key schedule. So now what we're going to do, we're going to open it up and see if we have any questions here. I think I have one. Give me 1 second, I'm trying to find this. Can you share these or transfer? Well, you know, I'm having a little trouble reading this. Oh, here we go. Can you share these or transfer these global parameters into other models? The answer is yes. You can. If you go up to Manage Transfer Project Standards and you go down, you can find your global parameters here. And also your, the same way you can transfer project parameters, right? So you'd have to have the other model open in this instance of Revit, and then you can transfer this information to your other model. Or it can be established as part of your template. Well, that's a conclusion of the material for this webinar, looking at global parameters and key schedules. I hope you guys found this beneficial. This webinar will be posted on our website within 24 hours, and you guys should receive an email notification once it has been posted. All right, and then thank you for joining us.